Imagine finding a perfectly intact ship drifting aimlessly in the open Atlantic Ocean. The sails are set, the cargo is secure, but every single person on board has vanished without a trace. This happened in December 1872. A Canadian vessel named the Dei Gratia was roughly 400 miles off the coast of the Azores when the crew spotted an erratic ship. They hailed it. No answer. So they sent a boarding party across the water to investigate. They found the Mary Celeste. The ship was entirely seaworthy and stocked with 6 months of food and water, but the single lifeboat was gone, along with the captain's chronometer and his sextant, the precise navigational tools you would need to survive in a smaller boat. Usually, an abandoned ship implies a violent storm or a pirate attack. The boarding party found no structural damage, no blood on the decks, and no distress signals. The complete lack of violence is exactly what turned a standard maritime disaster into an enduring mystery. You have probably heard the myths about this discovery. Pop culture loves to claim that investigators stepped into the cabin and found still warm cups of tea and half-eaten breakfast sitting on the tables. The truth is far more grounded and much sadder. The people who vanished weren't phantoms. They were Captain Benjamin Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and 7 experienced crew members. Captain Briggs had a pristine reputation in the maritime community. He was a veteran seaman, highly respected by his peers, strictly sober, and deeply religious. He respected the ocean. You do not risk your own wife and toddler on a whim. The presence of the captain's family eliminates any theory that the crew abandoned the vessel out of carelessness or amateur panic. Whatever caused them to leave that ship was a calculated response to what Briggs perceived as a fatal threat. To understand that threat, we have to rewind to November 7, 1872. The Mary Celeste sails out of New York Harbor, fully loaded, then headed for Genoa, Italy. Stowed securely in the hold were 1,700 wooden barrels of industrial-grade alcohol. It was a heavy, highly volatile cargo. When the abandoned ship was finally towed into Gibraltar a month later, the local Admiralty Court immediately suspected foul play. The judges accused the Dei Gratia crew of murdering Briggs for the salvage money, and then pivoted to accuse the Mary Celeste crew of staging a violent mutiny. The mutiny theory fell apart quickly. The cargo was denatured alcohol, a toxic solvent filled with foul-tasting additives. Drinking it wouldn't make a crew drunk and mutinous, it would just kill them. The court conducted a massive investigation and found zero evidence of a crime. That failure to establish a logical motive created an official information vacuum. Almost immediately, the public rushed in to fill it with paranoia. Newspapers began printing wild, sensationalist explanations. They blamed giant rogue waves, attacks by giant squid, and eventually even alien abductions. Then, in 1884, a young writer named Arthur Conan Doyle published a short story based on the event. He slightly renamed the ship the Mary Celeste and wrote a wildly popular fiction framed as a survivor's actual testimony. Conan Doyle is the one who invented the untouched breakfasts and added bloody swords to the narrative. His writing was so convincing that global newspapers mistakenly picked up his fictional details and printed them as historical facts. The greatest enemy to solving this case wasn't the ocean. It was a global media apparatus that realized a spooky ghost story sold far more papers than a cold, hard look at physical evidence. When we strip away the Victorian fiction and apply modern forensic chemistry and maritime modeling, we find a terrifying mechanical reality. Looking at this hull cross-section, we see the first failure. The Mary Celeste recently carried coal. Residual coal dust and construction debris washed down into the bilge, a very bottom of the ship, and severely clogged the internal pump. Compounding that broken pump was a severe lack of visibility. The hold was packed so tightly with cargo that Briggs couldn't insert a standard sounding rod. Blind to the actual volume of water, he had to guess if his ship was rapidly sinking. Then came the trigger. Port inspectors later discovered that 9 of those wooden barrels had leaked. In a dark, unventilated hold, roughly 300 gallons of highly explosive alcohol vapor accumulated into a massive pressurized bomb. A broken pump, an inability to measure the water, and an invisible explosive gas cloud created a deadly cascade of failure, a perfect storm of mechanical variables that forced a rational captain into a state of sheer panic. Briggs made a logical command decision. He ordered his family and crew into the lifeboat for a temporary evacuation. The standard protocol would be to tether the small boat to the main ship and wait at a safe distance to see if the alcohol fumes ignited. The boarding party found the physical proof of this exact scenario. The ship's thick main halyard, a heavy hoisting rope, was found trailing in the water behind the vessel. It had pulled tight and snapped in two. The crew tethered themselves to the Mary Celeste, but a violent storm rolled in. The sheer force of the ocean snapped the towline. 10 people were left stranded in a tiny boat in the open Atlantic, watching helplessly as their perfectly seaworthy ship sailed away with them. We have a primal fear of the deep ocean, but we are even more disturbed by people vanishing without an explanation. That psychological discomfort is why the ghost story outlived the forensic truth. The endurance of the Mary Celeste mystery lies in the silence of that empty deck, a family that did everything right, only to be left behind by a ship that refused to sink.